Hi, I'm Ron Duska. I'm Charles Lamont Post Chair of Ethics and the Professions here at the American College, and also the Director of the Center for Ethics in Financial Services. And I'm happy to be here today with Phil Cubeta, who is the Sallie B and William B. Wallace Chair in Philanthropy at the college. And Phil and I have something in common. When he first came aboard, we found out that he had studied ethical theory out in Oxford, that little-known institution over in England. And we got chatting, and since then I've had numerous occasions to talk. And we get talking about of course, as both being trained in ethics, we get talking about our teachers and the people we've read. But we got talking more importantly about the meaning of life, and I wandered in one day and said I was doing a session on distributive justice for my students. And they got all excited about the ways to distribute wealth. And I walked into Phil's office. I said, look at these. Do you do it equally? Do you do it by deserts? Or do you do it by need or merit? And we got talking about several things. And there's probably a couple I'd like to talk about today. But why don't we start with that one? Because I did an article on King Lear as having a bad financial planner because he split his kingdom. And what are your thoughts on some of that stuff, Phil?
I think one of the interesting things about literature as opposed to philosophy is literature doesn't usually give you an answer. Mm-hmm. It gives you a conundrum, and you address it as you can. And for those who aren't familiar with the play King Lear, it's a wonderful play in which a king who's older, again you might say estate planning age, is going to divide his kingdom into three parts. He has three daughters, and he's going to give each a third.
Equal, right?
Equal. Whether that's fair or not, it's going to be equal. And all he wants from them is for them to express deference and respect and love, and as a ritual enactment of that. And his youngest daughter finds it insincere, inauthentic, and she's not going to do it because she really does love him. So when she's asked, how much do you love me, she says nothing. And he chides her, and again and again and again, he makes it clear that unless she goes through this ritual performance, she's going to get nothing. Her two sisters, who really don't love him at all, give him fulsome praise. They get the kingdom divided in two. Cordelia, the youngest daughter, is cut out. And the king is surrounded by advisors. And one of the themes of the play is, what is it to be a good servant or a faithful servant? The faithful servants basically enable this entire deal to go down. Okay. There's one exception, and that's the fool, who is crazy enough to raise the difficult questions in riddles and jokes. And for his reward, he's usually beaten, sleeps in the stable, and eventually ends up with a king alone on the heath in a storm, and they're both naked. And the fool is mad, the king goes mad, and out of that experience he is, in a sense, redeemed and awakens to realize the two people who loved him, one is his daughter and one is his fool, and now none of them have anything. Okay, so that's the theme of the play. And they do mostly end up dead. The king, Cordelia, die. The fool disappears. And the play raises questions about our role as advisors. It does not answer them, but I think it raises them as clearly as they can be raised, which is, what kind of counselor do you want to be to the people who rely on you as they divide up their estates?
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because I see my I want to call them producers, but the advisors and planners out there, and we often get into discussion, should you give your client what they ask for, what they want, or what they need? And, when you get into what's in the interest of your client, what is it? And it's a tough call. It's a really tough call.
It really is a tough call. And it's a question I get a lot from the people we train in philanthropy, because in philanthropy, you begin to have these larger questions. I mean, we kind of meet as somewhat hard-boiled people over the financial statements, and there comes a moment where if you really want to get into what we call philanthropy, you've got to start asking questions that go beyond money and get more into the purpose of the theme of the person's life. So you might ask a question like, I actually got these from a Jesuit. Okay, a Jesuit teaches high school. He says he asks his high school kids these two questions. What kind of person do you want to be? In what kind of world? What kind of person, what kind of world?
Those, by the way, are the fundamental ethical questions. There's this whole movement in ethics nowadays toward what they call virtue ethics. I just think it's a return to the questions of, rather than what should I do,
right?
It's a question of what kind of person should I be. And I know we've talked about that too, because this is the Delphic Oracle. The unexamined life is not worth living.
Exactly.
And what do you want to do? It puts me in mind of a CNBC series a couple of months ago about where they were interviewing very, very wealthy people, and what were they going to do with their wealth and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But it does raise, I think, for the client, the very, very important question of what's really valuable in life. What is really wealth? I use the example out of Aristotle of him talking about if wealth becomes your only goal, that's a misuse of wealth, and it's not real wealth. It's like Midas's wealth. Everything turns to gold, but then he doesn't have a daughter or love and that sort of stuff. So there's some really, really great questions this, I guess, Jesuit, who must have studied his Aristotle, asks all the time. Yeah. And I know you've thought a lot about that. How would you advise the professionals out there to go about raising these questions, particularly when they're doing philanthropic counseling?
Well, let me kind of tell you a funny story to back into that, because I ask it all the time and always get the same reasons why not. So I've kind of made it my job to almost, I carry cards in my pocket of all the reasons why not to do this. And I think the most memorable response was from a financial planner that I respect a lot. He's a very good financial planner. Does a lot of philanthropic planning. He said, Phil, I won't do this. I won't ask those large questions because I am not the client's rabbi. Okay. So I had a chance to interview a rabbi. In fact, he teaches rabbis. And I said, Rabbi, will you ask these questions because the advisors won't? And these are the essential questions. These are the essential questions people need to ask and answer and align their life with that answer. And he said, you're right. I asked him, will the rabbi ask? He said, well, Phil, let me tell you, the rabbi has 3 roles. He's a prophet, so that sounds promising. Mm-hmm. He's a preacher, so that sounds promising. He's also an employee.
That doesn't sound too promising.
And as a prophet, he should ask. As a preacher, he should ask. As an employee, he's going to be concerned about asking somebody who has so much wealth and power, lest you get the response of King Lear, which is a slap down to people who appear to be impertinent. But the end result of all that, the end result of the advisors not asking, the priests and rabbis not asking, is that nobody asks. Mm-hmm. Nobody asks. And when you interview clients about what is missing in their wealth planning, it's that larger question that nobody asks. They're left alone at midnight asking those questions with nobody else to ask it with or hear another response. So I think if you have the courage simply to be a human being, so people ask, in what capacity? I've had attorneys tell me, I can't ask that question because it'd be malpractice. It's not covered by my E&O insurance. I don't get paid to ask that question. Well, if nobody asks it, the client has to answer it for themselves. If you're willing to risk that question in your capacity, I would say really not as a financial services representative or an attorney, but one human being with another, I'll say to people, I almost wish we could leave the office building and go sit in the park, because I want to ask you a question as one human being to another. I want to ask you the kind of questions I ask myself all the time, and maybe they resonate with you.
Phil, these are great ideas. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, could you give them your email address?
Yes, it's phil.cubeta, Cubeta, at theamericancollege.edu. Great,
and it's been a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we'll do this again in the future. And for any of you out there who are interested, if you want to look at more interesting stuff, go to the webpage, www.theamericancollege.edu. Put in a / and ethics, and you'll get to the Center for Ethics. And if you want to go to the Wealth Channel, it's www.thewealthchannel.com. Thank you again for watching us, and hope to see you in the future.